The process of predicting results and putting a plan together to increase the likelihood of positive result is considered good planning in business. Now, much less common is an in-depth, thorough review after a long project or a lengthy process of sales is over. In far too many businesses, employees are overwhelmed, and after the conclusion of a lengthy project or a sales process, win or lose, many times it's on to the next one, robbing themselves of one of the most important gifts that any employee or business as a whole could have, a history lesson. In business, we often call it a postmortem, which is a term I don't necessarily care for because it suggests it's a practice used only following the death of a failed project or a lost customer. It also suggests it's an act that is meant as a conclusion, only to be done at the end. Planning, although often does happen prior to beginning the project, it doesn't necessarily end there. It's constant. In similar fashion, a postmortem often is at the conclusion of a project, but doesn't necessarily start at the end. I prefer the military term that postmortems originated from, AAR, which stands for After Action Review. The two things I like about AAR instead are that any and every action in the project or sales process warrants a review, some more formal than others. And second, it's not tied to the life or death of your project. It's more continuous and happens in both victory and defeat. And that's the real purpose, to continuously improve, to learn three things from each and every action we complete. What went right, because we have to celebrate victories. What went wrong without blame or punishment to help level heads prevail. And finally, what are you going to do differently next time, either in this project or in future projects? After all, they say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. The reality is that the more complex teaming gets, whether it's working on large-scale projects or in-depth sales process, the less any one person knows how the full system even works, regardless of how well it's documented. What's critical for everyone involved in the team approach is that we understand the required inputs and expected outputs of their critical contribution to the team. It's the only way we can more consistently predict the outcome. There may be nothing more critical than instituting an after-action review or a post-mortem in your business systems. Now, in addition to the US military, which in my mind is one of the most well-defined systems in the world, every single person knows their role and it's clearly documented. Another great example of an organization that's adopted the after-action review is the NFL, or National Football League. In the planning phase, NFL teams will watch a vast amount of game film on their opponent. But after the game is over, almost immediately, coaches and players begin to extensively review each and every play and the performance of each player on the field at that time. Coaches review game film, commonly referred to as all 22, or film allowing coaches to see all 22 players on the field for both teams in order to conduct an in-depth analysis to determine three things: what worked, what didn't work and why, and finally, what are they going to change and do differently going forward. This is the only way to continuously improve and perfect your execution. Not only the end result, but what each of the 22 players on the field were doing in each and every play to contribute to the outcome. Could you imagine how much better we'd be if we were handed meeting film of every customer interaction during the full sales process, win or lose? Every single opportunity we face from that point on, we'd be far better prepared to capitalize. The NFL simply calls this game film or coaching or player development, not post-mortem. Although that does remind me of John McKay, the first coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who famously asked by a reporter in the midst of a 26-game losing streak, "What do you think of your team's execution?" To which Coach McKay brilliantly replied, "I'd be in favor of it." Now, that would require a post-mortem.